News Talk KVNU.
The information from a pretty balanced perspective.
Online at kvnutalk.com and on the KVNU mobile app.
KVNU News Time is 5:05. I'm Bill Walter with this news update brought to you by the Duck Hunter. Homelessness is a big problem in Utah, and northern Utah is not immune. An effort to gauge the extent of it locally is coming later this month. What's known as the Bear River Homeless Point-in-Time Count, or PIT count, will be held. On KVNU's For the People program on Thursday, one of the organizers, Jess Lucero, a USU social work professor, said the annual event is a federally mandated count.
It happens in every city across the United States on the same night every January. So this will be on the night of January 26th. That's Wednesday night. It'll be into the early morning hours on the 27th. We'll also be sending volunteers out on the 28th and 29th, so early Friday morning and early Saturday morning as well.
Wow.
Volunteers will go out to the Bear River area, so that's our Tri-County area, between 3 and 6 a.m., looking for folks who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness.
Lucero said it's a tough issue as nobody wants to see a high count of homeless individuals in our community. But when they are able to get an accurate count, it helps in a few different areas.
It helps us have a better picture of the true extent of the problem in our community, get better data to decision makers and policy makers in our community and in our state. And it has a real direct impact on the funding that flows into our community as well that can help serve those who are experiencing homelessness here.
Currently, volunteers to help do the count are needed. Volunteers will work in teams to seek out and interview persons experiencing unsheltered homelessness. To accomplish this, volunteers will receive training related to approaching and interviewing persons in this situation. For more information, contact Jess Lucero at jessica.lucero.usu.edu or visit endutahhomelessness.org/point-in-time count. Throughout this month, the Hiram City Museum is joining the members of the Northwest Band of the Shoshone Nation in commemorating the 159th anniversary of the tragic Bear River Massacre. Mayor Stephanie Miller explained that in recognition of that tribe's continuous membership in the Cache Valley community, the Hiram Museum was honored to focus its January programming on the current Shoshone efforts to reclaim the massacre site. That programming will lead off at 11 a.m. Saturday with a presentation by local icon Darren Perry, highlighting the work by members of the Northwest Band to restore native species of plants at the massacre site and prepare that area for construction of an interpretive historical center. Perry is a Providence resident, the former chairman of the Northwestern Band of the Shoshone Nation, an unsuccessful congressional candidate, and author of the historical monograph, The Bear River Massacre, A Shoshone History. Other museum events scheduled during January include back-in-time activities for children from 1 to 1:30 on January 25th through the 27th. During those events, museum volunteers will explore the beauty of the massacre site and discuss why that area made such an appealing winter camp for Shoshones back in 1863. A 28-year-old Ogden man has been transported to the hospital with a gunshot wound to the stomach. On January 6th, at about 10 o'clock, the Ogden City Police Department responded to a report of a gunshot wound. According to the press release from Ogden Police, the man's injuries were non-life-threatening. KUTV reports the Ogden Metro Gang detectives are currently investigating the case, and no suspects have been identified at this time. KBNU weather brought to you by Mount Logan Laundry. Don't pay for the expense of dry cleaning when you can clean your items at Mount Logan Laundry for much less. 500 East, 900 North in Logan. Also 1st East, 7th South in Brigham City. The cleanest spot in town. Tonight, rain likely, then a slight chance of rain and snow after midnight. Little or no accumulation. Low in the mid-20s. Cloudy in the morning, then partly cloudy on Saturday. High temperature in the mid-30s. It was 50 today. For the latest news, visit CacheValleyDaily.com. How
How often should you change the filter on your furnace? A lot of people are surprised when they find out that most filters are only good for 60 to 90 days. Some cheaper filters won't even last that long. If you buy a good quality filter, you should still have it checked or replaced every year. Doing this will make sure your furnace runs more efficiently and keep the air that you breathe cleaner. For a free consultation, call the Duct Hunter, 770-4813.
The latest news 24/7. News Talk KVNU 610 AM and 102.1 FM.
The Riverwoods Conference Center is the center in Cache Valley for business, entertainment, and special events. Whether you're hosting a large or small event, you have the choice of inside with all the new modern interior renovations or outside along the scenic banks of the beautiful Logan River. The Riverwoods is an ideal choice, offering seamless planning, easy catering coordination, and will make your event as professional or as beautiful as desired. To book your next event or for more info, visit theriverwoods.com or call 435-750-5151. We'll see you at the Riverwoods.
Think of your fellow man, lend him a helping hand, put a little love in your heart. You see it's getting late, oh please don't hesitate, put a little love.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. Hour 2 of today's show. It's time for the For the People movie show. Andy Morgan joining us in just a bit, and there are new movies coming out. There's also a whole slew of upcoming movies, a bunch of trailers dumped at the first of the year here for movies coming out throughout January and February, from a very creepy-looking film called See For Me to a one that looks like it maybe could be hilarious or could be scary. I don't know. I also don't know that this needed to happen, but we're getting a 2020s update on popular 90s horror film and franchise Scream. This was originally a Wes Craven vehicle. Wes Craven famous for some of the most iconic 80s horror films like Nightmare on Elm Street, and actually a pretty decent, I don't know, it's described as a horror movie, but I don't think it falls in that category. Kind of a half documentary style thriller is the category I'd put it in, called Serpent in the Rainbow, about this underground kind of drug trade in Haiti that was very popular in the 80s, a drug that was referred to as the zombie drug, and actually led to some live burials and things like that, some creepy stuff. But Wes Craven not involved with this Scream remake, but a lot of the, outside of, he gave it the thumbs up, but a lot of the original cast from the 90s Scream franchise coming back, including a name you haven't heard for a really long time, Neve Campbell. She was very famous throughout the 90s, made her first big splash as a star of the popular series Party of Five, and then really made it big in the Scream series, and then kind of didn't really do a lot more than that. Also, a lot of buzz online about the upcoming prequel to Game of Thrones on HBO. Kind of, not really a new trailer out, but some clips out of some of the scenes from what is anticipated, at least, or rumored to be the opening episode of this new series. And everyone wondering if this is something that has legs. The original Game of Thrones series, of course, based on already popular series of books by George R.R. Martin, the Song of Ice and Fire series, he calls it. And he's still working on that sixth book, 12 years since the fifth book was published. The HBO series, of course, got ahead of him and finally wrapped up. He promises the book series will have a very different trajectory than the HBO filmed series did. Something they knew from the start would be the case. But he's taken a pause on writing that sixth book to help out with this prequel. telling the story of the Targaryen family. New clips dropped online today have everyone talking about that, and this looks to be HBO's latest big run as far as popular series go. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. Hitting the streaming services this week, quite a bit actually. Topping the streaming services, though it's been on there for quite a while, The Power of the Dog. This is, Andy talked about this a couple of weeks ago here in the studio, kind of a creepy thriller, ominous overtones, odd movie, honestly, but good. But hitting streaming services this week, everyone excited. Dune will be available for streaming service. And then, of course, the newest season of Cobra Kai, which is a sequel to The Karate Kid with a reversal. I forget his... Do you remember his name? Who's the bad guy in The Karate Kid? I'll just Google it. What's the character's name? Johnny. So in Cobra Kai, Johnny's the good guy.
Isn't there one, though?
Ralph Macchio, Karate Kid, has kind of become a egotistical... Not so great guy.
That's kind of what
because of all of his success.
Yeah, he's kind of a weenie. Yeah. Anyway,
weenie. Is that what you were going to say? Yeah. I mean, that's how they paint him. And then Johnny, his life's kind of been a mess since his loss in Karate Kid in the '80s, and so he finally picks himself up, stops drinking, and gets his life together, and then he's the good guy in this one.
There's been some clips going around TikTok. The one thing I can't stand about TikTok. And I'm sure that there's some people out there going to be like, you know what, you're a jerk.
They'll say it anyway, movie boy.
There's so many things that are funny on TikTok. I mean, so clever. It's really just Vine. Let's be honest. Let's call it what it is. It's Vine. It's Vine.
But the kids don't remember Vine, so they're like, this is totally new.
Sometimes people post things and then go, reasons Vine was better than TikTok or whatever, and then the TikTokers are like, what?
Vine? What a stupid name for a social media platform.
But they're the same thing, right? They're the same thing. The people at Vine are like, man, we gave up too soon.
They have to be so mad. They did. They folded it like a year before. I mean, obviously nobody could have TikTok, the reason it was propelled into social media platform stardom was COVID-19.
It was.
You had all these kids sitting at home with nothing to do for at least 2 or 3 months.
But this is what I would say about TikTok, and I'm not so embedded in TikTok that I understand, like, but some of these should be considered for Oscar short films.
Oh, there is some good stuff.
There's really, the things I don't like. I don't like the the fake spoof prank things like, oh, look at him. I don't know, just stuff like that where it's set up. But there is some just organic videos that are just so great, but
hilarious.
But what I notice is this is a group. It's this age group, right? And it's this age group where they say things like, "Hey, it's actually going back to our conversations about Spider-Man last week. It's Spider-Man from these from Captain America: Civil War." When he goes, hey, have you guys ever heard of this really old movie, Empire Strikes Back? That's these guys on TikTok. They say things like, hey, there was a guy that made a video and he said, hey, there's a movie streaming on Netflix that has gone under the radar, and it's a horror movie called The Witch. And I'm like, hi, I don't know how old you were in 2014, but we were all talking about it, just so you know. I know maybe you 12-year-olds were talking about it that are now, graduated from high school, but come on, man. Or they say things like, they have issues with, there's this, anyway.
It's funny because it really is.
Sports is the same thing.
Yeah.
There was a thing today that they were like, I guess so one of the sports commentators said, so who was Michael Jordan's, they said if Kevin Durant is LeBron James' counterpart, in terms of like arch enemy, which I was like, I don't even know if that's the case.
That's a reach.
That's weird. Hi, welcome to For the People Movie Sports Show. But
it's relevant though. We're getting to it.
But somebody said, oh, Michael Jordan's counterpart, arch enemy would have been Karl Malone. And I don't necessarily disagree with that, right? Because they played the Jazz 2 times in a row in the finals, and they didn't play anyone else twice in a row, right?
Plus, I think personally they did not get along.
Well, but they were both Karl Malone
that's
longevity.
a rumor,
And so somebody said, really, you're comparing Karl Malone to Kevin Durant? I'm like, dude, the guy's the second leading scorer in the NBA, And someone was like, well, LeBron would have passed it if it wasn't for COVID. And I was like, wait a minute. You realize, too, LeBron's been playing since he was, 12?
Yeah.
Like, he entered the NBA at 12.
Yeah, I think he...
Somebody does it, they're like, movie boy, it wasn't 12, it was 18. Yeah, I know.
But young, very young.
Yeah, I know. Anyway.
Yeah, I know.
I'm being sarcastic. So, yeah, that's my issue. That's my issue with TikTok is, you got all these people... Or this was the one. This is the one that I was like, oh, my gosh, I'm probably going to have... I may literally have an aneurysm today. Somebody on Game Rant posted an article today. TikTok age, TikTok group, TikTok
Gen Z.
Gen Z.
Gen Z.
And he said, why Game of Thrones, why the Red Wedding ruined Game of Thrones.
Oh.
And I was like, dude,
that is the coldest of hot takes.
I was like, he's like, the popularity really went down. I went, and he talked about the season 8, and I was like, dude, season 8 had record viewers. Like, do some research.
The Red Wedding. So the same thing happened with the books. The Red Wedding comes in the books. It comes in book 3.
Yeah,
and it comes in season 4 or 3.
3.
End
of season 3.
That's right. They don't start
episode 9, Reigns of Castamere.
That's right. They don't start really taking departure from the books until they catch up to the books.
That was end of season 6, really, or season 6 is when they're
like, okay, there's only 5 books.
Okay, look, George wrote some notes on this.
Stalled as long as we can, George.
On this JB's Big Boy napkin. George wrote some notes. Does this say Arya and the Waif or Arya and the Wolf? I can't tell.
JB's Big Boy napkin.
Yeah, they met in New Mexico. They went over and they were like, George, can we just come to your house? He was like, nope. Why? Too many
You're buying me dinner.
Too many guys. Like, have you ever seen Hoarders? You see this hat? The reason I only wear this hat is because it's the only one I can find.
Same with the suspenders.
Yeah. Why does this apartment smell like Cheetos and French onion soup?
He definitely doesn't spend a lot of the time there writing.
He's watching football and sitting in his undershorts.
He owns a movie theater. Did you know that?
That
in
too.
New Mexico. Yeah, and the like an art house.
That was like everyone's COVID dream. They were like, winds of winter.
Yeah.
Yes. And George was like, how about instead I give you 10 blog posts on the New York Jets?
That's right. And here's a prequel.
Also, let me tell you about the 27 prequel game. Yeah. How about this? How about I just give you Fire and Blood, which is boring.
Did you see that? This week I started with this a little bit. I mentioned it, but... So some clips. It wasn't really a trailer. It's being called a trailer.
Yeah,
but,
it's the HBO Max preview for 2022. Is that what you're talking about?
So it's just like a bunch of little, there isn't even really anything revealed. It's almost like
it's actually
snapshots
from the trailer, the teaser.
And people went crazy. They're like, oh, this is going to be bigger than Game of Thrones. HBO really knows what they're doing. I'm hesitant because I know the story and so
have you read Fire and Blood?
Yeah.
It's boring.
And a lot of this is referenced in the books, the original books, too. And so they're going to go back and tell a story.
These are going to be the prequels. It's going to be the Game of Thrones prequels.
Yeah. So the Targaryen family, you're going to basically learn 200 years of history that leads up to Daenerys.
Well, it doesn't even start.
And her brother that gets gold poured over him in season 1.
It doesn't even start with with Aegon's conquest. Which is where which was Fire and Blood starts there.
That's right.
It picks up with I think Aegon rules, and then he has a son, and then one of his sons is like a super pious, really good leader. Like they're like, wow, this guy is I don't know.
It seems like they're starting it after the interesting part.
Well, I think this is what I'm worried about is if you look at the House of or if you look at Fire and Blood as as one long story. There's too much.
It was.
There's too much. Yeah, there was, and there's too much to tell, right? And it is really just like Game of Thrones.
It was basically George R. R. Martin's Silmarillion.
Yeah, it
really. If you've ever tried to read that, Tolkien's.
It's one of those things where it's like where someone asks a question, right? Where in Game of Thrones, one of the characters goes, "Oh, I'm reading about the Dance of Dragons, where Rhaena fought, Daemon and whatever," and then somebody goes, "Well, what's that all about?" And George goes, I'll tell you.
Well done. Here are 4 chapters.
Please don't fall asleep. Because it reads like somebody reading a history, an oral history, which I'm sorry.
It reads like the book of Genesis.
It does.
If you've ever actually sat and just read that through. It's
and Aegon begat.
Begat.
Yeah. And so it picks up where I think if I remember correctly, and I'm not 100% sure, but one of the really well-respected best king they've ever had in Westerosi history, that was this Targaryen king. He has a bunch of kids. He ends up dying. And the one guy, Jaehaerys, I think his name is, and then his kids are like...
He's also running out of names.
Yeah. They're like, how about, this is Jaehaerys.
Jonathan. You're just adding H's to things now, George.
This is Jahimi. And Jericho.
Kevinar. Lord Kevinar.
Yeah, I always make fun of George Lucas's names, but I always laugh. The ones that always crack me up are... Yeah, can we actually...
Whole teams of people at Lucasfilm signed off.
I don't know, though. Let's be honest.
Binks.
If you made that character and somebody showed you that picture, Jar Jar Binks would be the first thing that came out of your brain.
Okay, it fits.
Somebody's like, what do you think? And you're like, Jar Jar Binks.
So your 2 choices, you've got Mr. Yuck Yuck or Jar Jar Binks.
I was thinking big eyes, flappy dude, but no. That's more of a Game of Thrones name, and they're like, yes, this is Daemon Stinkwater, and you're like, what? Who? That's a last name?
What?
I'm finishing Dance of Dragons, and there's guys named like that. You know, you're like, what?
That's so. Do you think is this?
We actually did.
Does HBO get a hit out of this just because it happens?
I love how you're putting. It's really good that we put a stop to this because we can just keep going. Because I was about to just tell.
Well, we do have to get.
I was about to tell
break.
a complete story about how when I was reading the Game of Thrones novels, I decided to name everyone at my job. Gave them and people I gave. Yeah, so there was a guy I met one time, and his name was Babyface Greymane. Anyway, Babyface Greymane, if you're out there, I am sorry.
Hats off.
If you know it's you. Anyway, no.
753-5868 if you'd like to vent.
It's like, I think he's talking about me. No, here's the thing. What I'm excited about is they were running 2 prequels, and they killed one that they spent like $30 million on.
Wow.
They were like, yeah, maybe not this one. And then there was this. And the one, I think, positive on this is it's got a great cast. But more than that, the guy that is like the Helmer, the director of some of the best Game of Thrones episodes, Battle of the Bastards, The Bells, Long Night, Hard Home. Some of these great ones.
That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I'm gonna kill his name because I always mess it up. But it's Miguel Sapochnik, I believe is his name, and he actually directed the Tom Hanks movie Finch.
Really?
I didn't realize that until awards time. But anyway, he's the showrunner and he's the director to start. And I think he's the co-writer as well. So for them to put that trust in him and know how well he did, I mean, his episodes, again, there's not a bad one that he's done. He's so good. And so I really feel that that's the one thing I think could help.
That's very cool.
I don't know. You know, the other thing, too, is there's another director. I can't remember his name. I'll look it up in the break. But he's actually been associated with this new mini-series on HBO called Station 11 that if you're not watching, you should be watching.
So now the only reason...
Actually, maybe don't watch it. Wait until COVID's over.
The only reason...
A little too topical.
The only reason I know about this is...
the book, right?
Well, you recommended the book years ago, ironically during a movie show. We end up... It's hard not to talk about books during a movie show, though, because there is so much crossover.
Actually...
But you recommended the book, and you said at the time, I really think this would make a great... I tried to go back and find it, but we didn't have the audio. You said it would make a great HBO series. I don't know if you said HBO, but you said a series.
Mini-series,
you hope that it didn't become just a
not
2-hour movie.
No, it couldn't be. It would have to be a
so
series.
now here we are. We have it.
It's fantastic. You'll see this
Is it good?
come up with Emmys. The other thing I'd like to point out...
I'm making my way through the book right now, and I have to be honest with you. I think it's just my mindset right now, but it's a bit of a slog. I'm having...
How far are you into it?
About 15 pages.
It's gonna. So I will tell you right up. When you're at the beginning,
Shakespeare, huh? That's where I'm at in the book.
And it will literally turn the corner and somebody presses on the gas and it doesn't let up.
That's what I'm hoping for, because I know this comes highly recommended from people who usually don't lead me astray. You and a few others.
Miniseries is the same way.
Yeah.
Let me point this out, too. This is a nice segue as we go to the break.
Okay.
You said we can't not talk about movies or books if we're when we talk about movies.
Well, it's hard not to.
And the movie we're going to talk about today that hit Amazon Prime today streaming. So if you have Amazon Prime, you can watch it. There might be in select theaters. Is a movie called The Tender Bar that is based on a memoir.
Really?
That came out, I think, in 2005.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's directed by George Clooney, stars Ben Affleck and a few other people.
Wow.
And we'll talk about it. That's the movie we're going to talk about. There are a few other movies opening, too. The 355, the all-lady action movie, Jessica Chastain.
Yeah.
Lupita Nyong'o.
Looks like it could be good. Funny.
And then I think there's one, A Hero. If that's opening in select theaters, it's an international film. I think it's actually an Iranian movie.
I don't think
it's one of the better movies of the year.
I don't think we're getting it.
We're
here
not
in Logan yet.
It'll be on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
I think later this month.
And what about the only other one I saw? And I assume this is going to be hard to find because it's an independent film channel film, but it's called See for Me.
See for Me.
You know anything about that?
Oh yeah, and I'm not sure where that's playing, but
looks creepy.
It is. It's somebody's. You have somebody looking around for you because you're blind, and it ends up being like kind of a suspenseful, wait. What's the one with Audrey Hepburn? Wait Until Dark.
Yeah,
kind of like that.
There was also. Did you see Hush?
Yeah.
On Netflix.
Have you?
That was pretty creepy.
The other thing we should talk about is apparently James Wan, who's one of my favorite horror directors.
Can we say Wan? Can he be James Wan?
Yeah, sure. Wan. He's actually, it's funny because he's an Asian guy, and then he goes to talk, and he's Australian. So it just shows how the world is just all interconnected. You know what I mean? By the way, before we go to break, happy spring. It's a beautiful spring day today.
It feels a bit.
Thanks global warming.
It's dropped back down to a more closer to a January temperature. We're sitting at just over 36 degrees at the station here, but 52, I think Bill said it was the high.
Yeah.
So
I put shorts on. I put a tank top on. I actually mowed my lawn. It was weird.
I can see enough of my lawn. I might have to pretty soon because I didn't get that.
I got the raking done. I missed for the first snowfall.
That was me. The first snowfall melted, and I finally cleaned up the leaves, but I never got that final mow in. We'll be back with more of Andy Morgan in the For the People movie show right after this look at the news with KVNU's Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. KVNU News brought to you by Northern Steel Buildings. The Utah State Courts are reminding citizens that a limited number of hearings and jury trials are still taking place despite the COVID-19 pandemic. The alert was released as judicial staff report a number of cases where potential jurors, attorneys, or witnesses have failed to appear for legal proceedings. Tanya Mashburn, a spokesperson for the Utah State Courts, said jury trials and select hearings are still taking place statewide. The courts are conducting jury trials in compliance with the Utah State Judiciary Risk Phase Response Plan and are taking every possible state safety measure, including masking and social distancing when trials are held in person. Jurors and attorneys should continue to appear as scheduled unless they are notified by the court. Individual judges may be canceling some trials, but they will notify the jurors and other parties if that happens. Mashburn explained there has been some confusion about whether or not jury trials are canceled. It's because the Salt Lake City Justice Court suspended jury trials and the U.S. District Court for the District of Utah suspended jury trials. However, the federal court order and Salt Lake City Justice Court order do not affect jury trials happening in state districts, courts, or other county or city justice courts. Judges in the First District Court, covering Cache, Rich, and Box Elder counties, are holding all jury trials in person. Some preliminary and evidentiary hearings are also being held in person. Most other hearings are being conducted virtually, where individuals are expected to participate through web conference or phone. With the state sitting on a pile of cash, Idaho Republican Governor Brad Little is talking tax cuts, but also financial prudence. Democratic and Republican leaders in the House and Senate also talked tax cuts, but disagreed on how they would use the money. Property tax cuts, income tax cuts, and eliminating the grocery sales tax are possibilities. Little and lawmakers today spoke at the Idaho Press Club's 2022 legislative kickoff about what to expect in the session that starts Monday. Idaho budget analysts say the state has a $1.6 billion budget surplus. Infrastructure needs and bolstering public schools were also discussed. Boys high school basketball tonight. Logan is at home in the Grizzly Den hosting Century at 7 o'clock. We'll have that game on KVNU with Al Lewis with the call at about 6:45. Ridgeline is home against Grantsville at 7. That's on 104.5 The Ranch. Green Canyon on the road at Bonneville. That's on 100.9 Light FM. And Mountain Crest is at Morgan tonight at 7 o'clock. That game is on 107.7 KLZX. And all the games I mentioned also video streamed on CacheValleyDaily.com. Cache Valley weather brought to you by Maple Creek Ranch, featuring breathtaking canyon views and opportunities for real estate development. 2.5 acre lots are available. Visit maplecreekranch.net. That's maplecreekranch.net. Warm day today, 50 degrees has been our high. Cloudy tonight with rain likely. Slight chance of rain and snow after midnight. Little or no accumulation. And then becoming partly cloudy. We'll be cooling down over the weekend, mid-30s for the high tomorrow. For the latest news, visit CacheValleyDaily.com.
A building is just a building until it's your building. It's where you work, where you create, and where you store your valuable equipment. You take pride in your building, so make sure it's built right and built to last. Northern Steel Buildings will guide you from concept to construction. For your commercial, agricultural, or industrial steel building, visit northernsteelbuilding.com to see their quality work, or call 435-677-7300. Northern Steel Buildings. Value from concept to construction.
Bring back what you've been missing. Bring back Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology.
Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology is Cache Valley's most trusted name in hearing aid technology. Schedule a free consultation with Dr. Paul Danes by calling 753-HEAR or visit CacheHearing.com.
Bring back what you've been missing. Bring back Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology.
Ah, that's better. Trade in the stresses of building a new home for relaxation. Visionary Homes Priority is giving you a stress-free building experience. Named the best home builder in northern Utah, Visionary Homes team will guide you seamlessly through the home building process. Call today, 435-228-4702, or visit visionaryhomes.com to learn more about upcoming communities in Nibley, Logan, and Smithfield. Visionary Homes, built for living, built for you.
Hey there, I'm Lance Bass, and this is Chip. And for more than 100 years, American Humane has been protecting animals in times of crisis. And if you're like me, your pet means the world to you, and you want to keep them safe if disaster strikes. American Humane's first responders are always prepared to rescue animals in danger, but you can also help. To learn more about disaster planning and keeping your animals safe, please visit AmericanHumane.org.
Hi, this is Gordon Deal. Monday on This Morning, America's First News. After a weaker than expected jobs number for December, what does that do to the employment picture? Plus, grading the first year of President Biden's economy. Also, why some people who want a third COVID vaccine can't get one. They're called the Johnson & Johnson 16 million. And 5 ways to a bigger and quicker tax refund for filing season. Monday on This Morning, America's First News. Monday morning from 4 to 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM. Your station for news, weather, and sports.
We won.
All right, hey. All right, good job, guys. Let's just not come in tomorrow. Let's just take a day.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People movie show with Andy Morgan of AndyAtTheMovies.com. And
this song makes me sad.
Oh, that they're gone?
They need to come back.
You know, this is my, not to get us instantly off on a tangent, but this is one of my This was one of the most ironic things of the whole pandemic. So in December of 2019, My Chemical Romance announces a reunion.
Yeah.
They're getting back together.
Hey, guys.
They're going to make music. They're going to go on tour, all this stuff. They plan this big, they're going to have this huge event at a festival in June as their big comeback concert. Everybody's excited because this is a really good band. It's one of the few bands from the emo era that was actually talented.
Well, and everything got better.
Yeah.
As it went on.
Oh, yeah. Every album was better than the last, and then COVID.
Yep.
And they just scrapped the whole plan.
Well, I think they still are, but I don't know what they're... you know what I want to say to them? Look, man, if the 80-year-old Eagles are coming in May, come on, guys.
Yeah, that's... But so, you know...
But then Rudy Gobert got COVID.
Yeah.
And so we're really just...
And
It's like we got in the DeLorean and went back to March 2020.
It's really
People are like, hey, we're breaking COVID records all over the place. Woo!
It's like... It does have a sense of deja vu to it, this Omicron thing. It feels a bit like March 2020. Understandably, for good reason. And we'd probably all be better off if we kind of went back to a little of what we're doing. But, you know, throughout all this, so to tie this into movies, I've wondered... We'll never know. But I really wondered how many projects...
have been scrapped or paused.
Yeah, that would have been really great. That would have been, but have just stalled out and maybe will never happen now. And
I think,
or that are just still sitting on hold.
because there's things that are timely that become less timely. Here's what I think.
Because right now we've got West Side Story in theaters. Charlie and I talked about this yesterday on the Theater Hour because it's actually pretty good. But that was made in 2018 and 19.
Yeah,
and just
a lot of movies are like that.
Yeah. So a lot of what we're seeing right now was made 2 years ago, and
yeah, it's tough.
I know stuff's being made still more slowly in the last 2 years. But.
Yeah, and obviously they need to have COVID, precautions and things like that. But the problem, I
also have Alec Baldwin precautions too, based on.
I can't hear.
No, I shouldn't make that joke. The poor guy. That would be so awful.
I cannot hear. What I don't want to hear. And I don't want to see articles about is box office stuff.
Yeah,
because we can't. Nobody knows.
Yeah, like what's a hit in a pandemic?
It's the same.
What dollar amount
travel
is a hit?
I mean, everything is down, right?
Yeah.
This is why sometimes I'm like, when you say things, do you think it through before you say it? Right?
Yeah.
Like when people are like, "Wow, that was a real box office bomb." Was it a bomb?
Yeah.
4 years ago. Fine, go ahead and make that. But today you just can't. And then,
as far as we know, Dune was an extremely successful theater run.
Somebody said
because it did actually make a lot of money, and maybe that's the cap in a pandemic.
Well, but somebody said this to Spider-Man. They said Spider-Man shows that it wasn't the pandemic that hurt the box office, and I said I call total tomfoolery on that.
I saw some of that discussion.
My thing would be, if we weren't in a pandemic, would Spider-Man No Way Home be the highest grossing movie of all time? Would it have made $1 billion?
Yeah.
Domestically? I don't know.
I would guess being the third in a trilogy and being one of the last few. I mean, we've got of that original Marvel, not act, what do they call it? Phase.
Yeah.
Phase 1 and 2 and 3. Spider-Man and Thor are the remnants.
They're and people want to cling to that so much because
I think that really, like you said, Spider-Man could have beat Titanic's record.
Who knows?
Outside the pandemic,
we don't know. So anyone that's listening out there, journalists that are trying to put a little clickbait piece together about some box office-y type thing. I haven't even remotely even touched on it, and the reason is because you don't know. We don't know what we don't know.
No. And you can't really go back 100 plus years to the Spanish flu pandemic because
there wasn't movies.
There were movies.
Hey, just FYI, there's been about 25 less people out on the pier watching Dorlita's Passion Dance today in the Nickelodeon.
They
FYI.
They did have those strangely weighty records. Have you ever held one of those?
When
those turn of the century
cement
phonogram, but they're like 200 pounds. And it's just a song.
So the guy was like, but you can actually look in those little, Nickelodeons where the guy's like, crap, we only made 45 cents today. This totally would
obviously
have been,
the Spanish flu.
This would have killed it. We would have made $1. $1 back in the day.
No, I get what you're saying though. Like there are a lot of unknowns, and you can't. I personally, if I'm
there's no apples to apples in the pandemic.
Yeah, if I'm a big studio, or I'm a promoter, or I'm anyone who's in the business of gauging success or failure on movies and what should be made and greenlit going forward because of that, I'm going with the whole: did it make more money than it cost? Because personally, I think in a pandemic,
that's what you've got to look at.
In a pandemic, if you made more money than it cost, you probably succeeded.
Yeah, and again, I think,
and Spider-Man did that. West Side Story did that.
Theaters aren't going away anytime soon. People liked to get out of the house. Think how long when you were cooped up at home, right? Nobody wants to. I mean, listen. I will tell everyone that I have turned a complete 365 degrees on the whole streaming thing. You heard me 5 years ago. I was like, dude, streaming until they can get better quality. Yeah, I just don't get it.
Well, I remember though, early Netflix was awful.
It was, and I haven't.
No one likes to watch buffering.
Yeah, I haven't bought a Blu-ray.
And early HBO, Game of Thrones era, mid Game of Thrones era HBO. It was awful.
You couldn't get things.
It was horrible to watch.
No, I'm at the point now where there is so much entertainment options, but people will, I do wonder. This is one thing I wonder, and I have nothing to base this on. So, this is just more of a personal reflection. But I wonder if we'll get back. I wonder, coming out of the pandemic, to your point with projects and things, I wonder if we'll get back to this maybe less aggressive. Hey, we've got a blockbuster every week. I don't see it in the near future.
Yeah.
But, you remember back in the day, you'd be like, oh, this is coming out on July 4th, and it's the only thing in the summer, right?
It's one of the few downsides to the success of Marvel, I think. In the last 10 years, summer movie season has become Marvel blockbuster movie season.
I heard somebody say that.
And everyone expects that.
Yeah, I heard somebody also say, well, let's take that a step further, right? I mean, if you know that, because that's what you have, right? Is you have, like, it was like July 4th weekend, we're releasing Guardians of the Galaxy 2.
Yeah.
And then the next weekend they're like, and then this next weekend is Mission Impossible 4, right? Or whatever.
Like there was at least every 2 weeks there was some big thing.
There's instead of one movie on Memorial Day, you've got 3 or 4 coming out.
It would get overwhelming. The summer, I can't remember if it was Endgame or Infinity War. The summer of one of those two, it was overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
There was too much, just in theaters, there was too much I wanted to go see, and I didn't have time to get out to one every weekend.
Yeah.
And so, I missed a lot. And
I think what happens, though, is I think you see people, this is the way I look at pre-pandemic. In fact, we should start calling it pre-pan. That's what they say in Station 11. They're like, are you a post-pan or a pre-pan?
Post-pan or pre-pan?
If when you were born, pre-pan or post-pan. Anyway,
I feel bad for people who are growing back to Gen Z. This is a generation that grew up. They are skilled professionals at evacuating a classroom in a live shooter situation.
Yeah. This is the 9/11.
We've always been at war until the last year in their lifetimes. The pandemic, very, very weird politics.
PTSD. When people, social media. Yeah, when people talk about, like, kids today having, anxiety and depression and things like that, like, well, yeah.
Duh.
Yeah,
right. It would be a fairly
look at the
anxious time.
Environment that we've created for these folks.
Yeah, the big scandal at my high school when I was in high school was the kid that had a tiny little bit of marijuana in his backpack, and the school did a whole lockdown and searched every locker, and everyone talked about that for 2 years.
The most violent thing that ever happened to me when I was in high school was this kid took off his belt and tried to whip some people. So we had a school whipper, and we
just
didn't have
randomly. Or
they were just fighting, and he took off his belt and started like really swinging it around, and everyone was like, "Take cover!" That was what I mean. I never at one point in my entire high school or middle school or elementary schooling did I ever go, "Man, I hope somebody doesn't come in here and kill everyone with a gun."
Yeah,
right.
That was
never.
And the closest I can come to relating to that as an adult is now we did a live shooter training here at the station. Logan City Police did that for us. That was unnerving but necessary. And then we did
it's not me.
movie theaters. like the movie theaters, like after the Colorado thing.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the first time I went into a movie theater, and for the first time in my life, I marked exits like they tell you to do.
100%. Especially where I see so many movies.
Yeah, and I noted where I was sitting in my relationship to the, and I'll be honest with you, it went through my head.
Yeah,
I should move somewhere else because if someone comes around that corner, I'm in the
Yep.
So now imagine a generation that's just grown up thinking that way.
No,
at all times, it's just it's how life works to them.
My parents exposed us to the news a lot when we were kids, and I remember reading an article in the paper about a shooting at a McDonald's in California.
Yeah,
and I remember reading an article about a shooting in a post office.
And remember, there was
that was where the whole "Go Postal" expression came from.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest,
and there was a famous bell tower back in the...
That was Kansas State, right?
70s, 80s?
Yeah.
When was that?
But that was, for me,
bell tower shooting.
I remember going to a McDonald's after that and going to the post office and thinking, feeling a little unnerved because it just was weird. But when I grew up in the 80s, I was more worried about volcanoes and acid rain and Russia nuking us than I was.
That was, I went to Mountain Crest. I was worried about earthquakes. They've fixed it since then, but I don't know if you ever saw it, but Mountain Crest used to have these huge cracks.
Really?
Where and it's sitting right on the fault line.
Oh,
but
that's good.
It was bad engineering, and it was something that was supposed to flex, but it didn't. And so there were these gaps that, every year of high school, they were just growing wider and wider. And then I remember
until the very jaws.
Yeah, I was on the high school newspaper team, both my junior and senior year, and I did a series of.
You're Peter Parker.
I was. I did a series of features on the fault line and the design flaws of the school, and after that, I spent my entire senior year going, "Did you guys feel that?" I felt that. I think was that a truck driving by, or is the school about to kill us all?
Yeah, there's enough beef trucks in Hiram that you might actually think that.
That was honestly my biggest concern.
That is funny.
That and this one bully on the bus ride home, but we ended up becoming friends.
Was it?
I actually can't tell you how that ends, but
well, there are the memoirs. Speaking of memoirs, the Tinder Bar. That's a memoir. It's not in theaters.
So this is
in the local.
I did not know this was based on a memoir. I saw the trailer.
It is.
And I'm interested, but now I'm really interested. I didn't know this was something that happened to somebody.
And here's what I'll say. Do we have to take a break?
Yeah, let's take a break.
I'll tell you more about it when we get back, but it's... Yeah. I have mixed thoughts.
Okay. All right.
Mixed thoughts, Jason.
The Tinder Bar. Mixed thoughts from Andy on this one in theaters this weekend, of course, here on the For the People movie show, which continues right after this.
Wow, your cars look so shiny.
Thanks. I've been taking them to Green Gorilla Car Wash. Thanks to their new ceramic application, my cars have never had such a glossy shine.
Sounds expensive.
You haven't heard about their sale? Right now, their Jungle membership with ceramic coating is half off for every vehicle. Instead of $30 per month, I'm only paying $14.99 from now until September 2022.
That's almost a whole year.
I know. My half-price membership is good at both Green Gorilla locations in the Valley.
I better head there now.
The best high school basketball in the state is being played in northern Utah, and every Region 11 high school basketball team is broadcast on local radio and now video streaming on CashValleyDaily.com. All the games are covered on air and online with a dedicated broadcast crew for each school. Listen or watch the exciting action of every game, and after the game is over, go back and watch it again. All the details are available right now on CashValleyDaily.com. High school hoops, the biggest games of the week.
He's Caucasian?
Caucasian?
Yeah, a white guy. With a mustache, about 6'3".
An awfully big mustache.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People movie show with Andy Morgan of AndyAtTheMovies.com.
Is there anyone better delivering those lines than Leslie Nielsen? That just kills me every time.
Oh,
that's an awfully big mustache.
Awfully big mustache.
So funny.
The Naked Gun is just such an iconic. Yeah,
it's not something you could reboot either. I don't think
it's awkward thanks to OJ, but
actually, I enjoy it. If you're not an OJ fan, watching him get beat up. Nordberg, why are you in Detroit?
I remember, when I saw those movies, because a lot of this hadn't happened yet with OJ, and I remember thinking, man, that poor guy.
Yeah.
Like, gets assaulted through that whole movie, and then...
OJ.
Later, you're like, maybe he deserved it.
That was a
maybe
clever,
they knew where he was headed.
I was trying to think of actors like that today that are in roles where they're a serious actor and then you put them in a comedy and...
Yeah, people forget Leslie Nielsen did more
Westerns,
than the Naked Gun. Yeah.
Well, and the other guy that played his partner, I can't think of what his name is. Same
Nordberg?
thing. Not Nordberg. The other older guy.
Oh.
I can't think of his name. Anyway, he was a serious actor. He was in... oh God, what was he in? I think he was in a movie with Paul Newman. He was in a, he was not a comedic actor. It's same thing with Airplane, right?
Yeah,
Airplane's
chock full of Oscar winners.
Peter Graves, and you got June Cleaver.
Not for Airplane, but they won Oscars before Airplane.
Right. Anyway,
George Kennedy.
He
plays Ed Hocken.
Yep.
Hocken.
Yep. And you know who else? An actor that comes to mind is Richard Jenkins. Not a household name, but it's a face. You hear his voice, you see him, and you think, "Yep, that's him." They put him in a movie, where it's a little silly, and I don't know, like Step Brothers. He's so funny because he's such a serious actor, and so he's so great in that. Another actor that I think has the potential, but I think his time has passed a little bit, is George Clooney. I think he had a chance. Like, you remember the movie Burn After Reading?
Yeah.
Both him and Brad Pitt in that. That was so out of character for them to be in kind of a goofy, like, dark comedy.
Yeah.
That it just, I don't know.
And the crossover doesn't work both ways. Eddie Murphy has tried more serious roles. It doesn't work for him. Jim Carrey, we've talked about.
Oh, my gosh.
He couldn't do it. Adam Sandler did, but that one's still strange to me because he's still Adam Sandler.
And what happens with
Adam? He's just quieter Adam Sandler.
What happens with Adam Sandler is...
Robin Williams pulled it off, though.
Robin Williams did. I agree. Robin Williams is probably one of the only ones that was able to do it. But you know what it is, though? I'd still go back with it. It's the quieter Robin Williams. Because it's still Robin Williams, but he's quiet. It's just quiet Robin Williams. It's like, hey, Robin, in Mrs. Doubtfire, you had everything at a 12. We need you to dial it back to a 2.
Yeah, that was it. Honestly, he made Good Will Hunting. But then you see there were other films where, like Patch Adams, where you're like, could you maybe be more Robin Williams? Because this is horribly boring.
Ben Stiller's a little bit like that, too. They try to put him in some serious movies, and you're like, nope.
Ben Stiller's is best at being absurd.
The best movie with
his
those
character
guys,
in Arrested Development, the corrupt magician.
He's the best.
Just so perfect.
He's the best, both him and Adam Sandler in the Meyerowitz Chronicles. I don't know if that's still on Netflix. It's a Noah Baumbach movie, and it's honestly probably one of my favorite movies of the last 3 or 4 years. It'd definitely be in the top 25.
Yeah.
So funny, heartwarming, just dark comedy. Dustin Hoffman.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, it's really good. And those two guys are quiet. I think Ben Stiller actually is a little less, he fails a little bit more, but Adam Sandler is just so quiet, and that's actually, I think, one of his best movies that he's ever made. And it's under the radar because a lot of people don't know about it.
And he does actually act in that one. But my absolute favorite, I don't know, I don't think people should even consider it a role because it's like a cameo. But my absolute favorite serious actor or dramatic actor in a comedic role is Brad Pitt in his role in Burn After Reading.
Yeah, I agree.
The obsessive fitness jogger guy.
So goofy.
Spoiler alert: he has this iconic death. That role was so funny, and getting someone who would been in so many dramatic films. Anyway, sorry, you had a review.
But speaking of George Clooney, so he directed this movie, The Tender Bar. This is on Amazon Prime. It's R-rated, mainly for language. I think there's a sex scene in the movie that's a little uncomfortable. I didn't actually expect to see that. I was like, whoa, all right, that was out of left field. It plays into the story, but. Yeah, it's just this kid that just grows up in this house with his grandpa, his grandma, his mom. Basically, their whole family, when they are down on their luck, they come back and live with grandpa, who's played by I can't think of. I'm played by Doc Brown. Really? Christopher Lloyd. Christopher Lloyd. Yeah, I almost said Christopher Plummer.
I can't think of his name.
Anyhow, and it's just kind of this tender story. I think that's where the Tender Bar comes from. Where he's just, this kid that, was pretty much didn't have a father. He knew his father, but his dad was a jerk. He just grows up being raised by kind of a community. And here's the thing. When he's little, And through his kind of like when he's a little kid, it really works. And the movie is it's heartwarming. I really like the trajectory of it, but once he becomes an adult, I just stopped caring. I thought the kid was a whiner, and the other problem is they're trying to just shove this memoir in, and it just doesn't work. So it's okay. I give it a B-. It wasn't the greatest thing I've ever seen. I thought Ben Affleck did pretty good, but overall, it's just kind of too much in too little time, or not enough in too little time.
So what should people go see instead?
You know what? Catch up on your streaming.
Is this the weekend to do that?
I think this is the weekend to pass on some movies. Unless you can get your See a Hero. That would be the one I'd check out. The Iranian movie. That should win.
That looks good,
it's really
actually.
good. Yeah. Maybe just go watch The Book of Boba Fett on Disney+.
Which is also interesting.
Anyway.
Good weekend to catch up on streaming. We do have more films in theaters next week.
Yeah, we'll talk about The Tragedy of Macbeth next week. Hitting Apple Plus.
All right. Dave Ramsey next.